Hello friends, welcome to Health, Music and Fitness channel. Today we'll be discussing another ECG, is supraventricular tachycardia, PSVT, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. Now you might be wondering why it is called supraventricular tachycardia and paroxysmal also, because paroxysms of this supraventricular tachycardia, they occur. This tachycardia occurs in paroxysms, so it's a paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. Sometimes it is also called as SVT, which is a simple supraventricular tachycardia, but when it occurs suddenly, it is called PSVT, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. Now, there are many reasons why supraventricular tachycardia occurs. So, what will the patient present with when there is a PSVT? So, the heart rate is very fast. It is more than 200 beats per minute or maybe up to 350 beats per minute. And then the patient will experience breathing difficulty, chest discomfort, very severe palpitations and syncope, sweating. All these things can happen whenever there is PSVT. And what are the causes? What can increase your heart rate? Anxiety can increase your heart rate. Caffeine, tea, they can increase your heart rate because they will have a sympathomimetic effect. And because of anxiety, there is adrenaline rush and your body is prepared for flight, fright, or fear. These three basic responses. Adrenergic drive is more and the cortisol levels are high, which is also a stress hormone. So your heart rate will go up. So that is how anxiety or stress can increase your heart rate and can precipitate PSVT. Then nicotine, psychological stress, and WPW syndrome and other arrhythmias outside the normal heart rate of 60 to 100. Mind you, whenever there is heart rate more than 100 and less than 60, any type of brady or tachyarrhythmia can set in. Usually PSVT is a re-entrant tachycardia, and which means like there is an abnormal cycle which is created. In that, the arrhythmic wave, it keeps on spinning, and that is how the tachycardia starts. So then you will think, so what are the features, ECG features of PSVT? Now, till now we have discussed almost all the supraventricular arrhythmias. We have discussed atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, MAT, multifocal atrial tachycardia, and supraventricular ectopics, premature atrial ectopics. So all these we have discussed, and today is the last one we'll discuss, that is PSVT, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. Anything in the ventricular mass, or in the interventricular septum, or in the bundle branches, that can give rise to broad QRS. Okay, and so what is a supraventricular arrhythmia? So in the ECG, it is supraventricular, so which means the impulse is starting in the supraventricular area. So it could be starting from the SA node or in the atrium ectopic. Foci can be there, which is firing in like in MAT or PAT. So the heart rate will be very fast because of the rapid firing of the atrium or the SA node. Then AV junctional rhythm can also cause supraventricular arrhythmia. So AV junctional rhythm, like there will be no P wave. So the QRS will be of normal duration, less than 3 small squares. If the arrhythmia is arising in the ventricles or in the bundle branches, so the QRS can be wide, like in left bundle branch, right bundle branch, or the ventricular mass. So then the QRS will be broad. But in supraventricular arrhythmia, it is occurring outside of these zones. So then QRS will be of normal size, normal duration, less than 3 small square. 1 small square we discussed 0.04 seconds. So 3 small squares will be 4 3 is 12, 0.12 seconds. Okay. So this is one of the important findings in PSVT. Then you might not see the P waves because the heart rate is so fast. So you will not see the P waves. And once the heart rate slows down, you give some medication, you give adenosine or diltiazem or verapamil or cortisone in certain conditions. And sometimes you will have to give a DC shock also, and that will help in breaking the abnormal cycle. What else you will see in PSVT which is not seen in VT? Because it is supraventricular, P wave has to be there. But in this ECG, like you cannot see the P waves. And so if you slow the heart rate, if you slow the ventricular rate, slowly you will see the P waves will be hidden in the distal limb of the S wave or in the distal limb of the T waves, or they will make the T wave as biphasic. So you have to carefully look for those. And how you will come to know that these are P waves? Because they will be occurring at regular intervals. Okay, regular intervals, and you will see a QRS complex, but the heart rate is very fast. And many a times you will still be confused whether it is a supraventricular or a ventricular arrhythmia, because when the ventricular rate is very fast, even a VT can look like a PSVT, or a PSVT can look like a VT. So you have to decide on that particular patient, because the treatment is sometimes different, and sometimes you have to give certain drug which can control both the types of arrhythmias. So the best drug is Cordarone, Amiodarone. So if you are stuck and you are not very sure which type of arrhythmia it is, so go for Cordarone. So you can give 150 milligrams IV bolus over 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and then you can start an infusion and ask for help, and send the ECG to somebody, and get it interpreted, and titrate the medications. So this is how you will control the ventricular rate. We are going outside our curriculum today. How you will treat PSVT. So it's a supraventricular arrhythmia. So if you give carotid sinus massage, and mind you, whenever you give carotid sinus massage, if you have time, usually you will not have time, but if you have time, always look for the bruit, because sometimes there is an abnormal lobe of the thyroid, and patient has occult hyperthyroidism, and if you massage over the thyroid mass, you can push the patient into tachycardia, and already the patient is having tachycardia. So if there is a bruit, you should not give massage on that side, and always give carotid massage on one side, not to simultaneously on both sides, only on one side first, maybe on left side or right side, and use your thumb whenever you have to give the carotid massage against the cervical spine, okay, like this. And you will see the heart rate will start coming down, and you should always keep on looking at the monitor. Sometimes it will respond, and many times it might not respond also. So then you go for adenosine. Adenosine you can give 6 milligrams IV bolus. You have to give it fast bolus, and it will try to stop the arrhythmias, and many times it is successful. Sometimes adenosine might not work, then you have to give diltiazem or beta blocker or verapamil, and these three drugs are also very effective. Beta blockers are cancer channel blockers, so they are effective in abating the PSVT attack. And sometimes the patient will become hemodynamically very unstable. He's going into shock, the BP is falling down, and you think the patient might not make it. In that case, you should not wait. You give a synchronized DC shock. And if the patient is a very small child, maybe 1 to 2 joules of DC synchronized. When you say synchronized, there is a button on the defibrillator. So there is a synchronized mode and a desynchronized mode. In synchronized mode, the machine will sense the R wave peak, and when the peak is sensed, then it will fire. If the QRS is not forming, like in VT, you will see a torsadi pointes type of pattern, or very broad QRS pattern. In that case, the machine will not be able to sense the peak of the R wave, and then it will not fire. So in that case, if you're suspecting a ventricular tachycardia, you should give a desynchronized DC shock. But if you're suspecting supraventricular tachycardia, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, in that case you should give synchronized DC. So if the patient is awake, the electricity, the current will be very uncomfortable to the patient. You tell the patient that you are going to shock him, and make sure you are all away from the person, and then you give with maybe 120 joules or something like that. But if the patient is hemodynamically unstable, he is going into shock, and you feel the patient you might lose the patient, then you go for 360 joules straight. Okay, that's the highest joules that you can give with the defibrillator. And then afterwards, you can do His-Bundle studies, electrophysiological studies, and trace the arrhythmia pathway, and you can ablate the pathway. But many times, even after ablation, the patient will come with a new re-entrant tachycardia. So this will keep on happening. So now I have a very interesting ECG today, and we'll discuss that. And this patient had paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. Hello friends, welcome back. So now we'll be discussing about PSVT, and we'll look at the ECG. And now if you see, I'll have to change the camera angle. I'm recording from the laptop webcam and also through the phone. So nevertheless, we'll start. So in this, first you look at the calibration. Calibration is okay, is 10 small squares in height and horizontal plateau. Okay. Then you look at the heart rate. From the heart rate, you will determine like whether it is a tachycardia or a bradycardia. So always rate, rhythm, axis. Okay. So in this, you see it is like 2 pi squares between 2 RR intervals. So heart rate is 300 divided by 2 is 150. So it's 150 beats per minute. Now it is regular. It is not irregularly irregular. Sometimes atrial fibrillation with fast ventricular response, it will also look like this. And it will be at times very difficult when there are 2 or 3 fascicular blocks together, like in this ECG. So this is a tachycardia, one thing we have determined, and QRS is slightly broad. So I will try to zoom in. Now you calculate the QRS complexes. So 1, 2, 3. We'll check in some other lead. 1, 2. It is almost 3 small squares. Okay. So it's broad. It's slightly broad. So once the QRS is broad, it should make you think again. Is it a supraventricular or a ventricular? Is it supraventricular along with a supraventricular arrhythmia? Is there something else which is broadening the QRS complexes? So maybe there is a right bundle branch block with the PSVT. Maybe there is a LBB with the PSVT. Maybe there is a RBB plus left anterior hemi block plus PSVT. PSVT as such will not do anything to the axis. Okay, it doesn't come in the diagnostic criteria of PSVT axis. So, but like I always says, rate, rhythm, axis. You have to always go like this, and 100 ECGs you have to interpret keeping that circle in mind. So QRS is slightly broad, and you can't see the P waves out here. Okay, and then you go to lead 2, you see there is a S wave. Lead 3, there is a S wave, deep S wave. So once you have determined there is a S wave in lead 3, so lead 3 is placed at how many degrees? Plus 120 degree. The positive pole of lead 3 is at plus 120 degree. So the negative pole of lead 3 will be at opposite to that, minus 60 degree. Okay. Now you look in lead 1, you have looked in. Now you look in AVF. AVF is deep S wave. So again, the vector is going away from AVF, away from lead 3. So AVF we will plot at negative pole at minus 90. Okay. Plus 90 is AVF's positive pole, and minus 90 is AVF leads negative pole. So it is in the LED quadrant. Okay. So lead 1 is positive. Lead 1 is at 0 degree. AVF is at minus 90 degree. Okay. So there are 4 quadrants: LED quadrant, normal quadrant, RAD quadrant, and extreme RAD quadrant. Some call it extreme LED quadrant. So once you have determined this, that lead 1 is positive, QRS in lead 1, QRS is positive or negative. So you minus R waves from S waves, or S waves from R waves, whichever is more, from that you minus the other. Similarly, you do the same thing for AVF. Okay, so lead 1 is positive. So let us say AVF is, let us say lead 1 is 5 and 10. Okay, 10 positive and 3 negative. This is the isoelectric line. So 3 negative. So AVF is plus 7, 10 minus 3, plus 7 positive. AVF is, this R is hardly around 1 small square, and this is, let us say, 8. So this is also 8 minus 1, 7. So AVF is minus 7, lead 1 is plus 7. So it's a LED, and there is a deep S wave. So it's around, axis is around minus 60 degrees. So that is a significant axis deviation. Then we'll go further. So right now I'm thinking of, is there a left bundle branch block? The QRS is broad. Okay, but till I reach lead V1 and V2, I will keep on thinking like this. Is it a left anterior hemi block, left bundle branch block? The QRS is broad. Is it a VT? I can't see the P waves. Now you come here. So in V1 you see there is a R dash pattern with concavity upwards and T wave inwards. This is a complete right bundle branch block. So you should always remember the electrical activity of left ventricle is dominating over the right ventricle. So if there is something wrong in the right ventricle and also in the left ventricle electrically, the left ventricular electrical activities will superimpose themselves over the electrical activity of the right ventricle. Now there is a right bundle branch block in this ECG. Ideally there should be a right axis deviation. Okay, in right bundle branch block there is a right axis deviation, but here you are seeing a left axis deviation. So once you are seeing a RSR dash pattern, concavity upper ST depression, T wave inversion, tall R in V1, V2, deep S in V5, V6. So this is a complete criteria for right bundle branch block, but axis is left axis deviation. Then you look for something which is causing LAD. So what else can cause LAD? Left anterior hemiblock. So now you see in lead 2 and 3 there is a deep S wave and there is a LAD of minus 60 degrees. So that is LAHB. It can't be LBB and RBB together. So because then there is a complete heart block sort of pattern and the impulse is not going to the heart, to the ventricle. So it is a bifascicular block, which means there is a major right bundle branch block and a small LAHB, left anterior hemiblock, plus a PSVT. Now I will show you another ECG in which you will, okay, in this only I will show you. So out here you see this sharp conical complexes out here where the mouse is. These are the hidden inverted P waves you are seeing here. So you will see in many places. Sometimes it will be very difficult to distinguish and say for sure that this is a P wave. Out here you can say P, this is a P, P, P. So it is occurring at a regular interval. P waves are occurring at regular intervals. So those are the P waves. So this is a P, there are P waves. So it is not a ventricular arrhythmia, it is not a VT. Then one more thing, if the heart rate is 200 or more, only then you should consider the diagnosis of ventricular tachycardia. Usually VT will occur at more 200 or above heart rate, but that is not the final saying. But generally if it heart rate is more than 200, we think of VT then. This is 150 beats per minute. Then okay, so yeah, so that's it. So there is a right bundle branch block, left anterior hemiblock, and a paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. No, one more thing. So why it is not a VT? There is a right bundle branch block. So the impulse is coming from above. It is not arising from the ventricles. So that clarifies it. There is the LAHB. So impulse is not starting from the ventricles. So it is a supraventricular arrhythmia. It has occurred suddenly. There was a paroxysm. So it's a paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia with right bundle branch block, complete RBB, and LAHB. So this was all in the ECG, guys, and I hope you liked it, and I hope you are benefiting from these ECGs. And please do subscribe and share these videos with your friends. Share these with on your Facebook page and on Twitter and your what all things you're using, and Snapchat, and what else you use. So share these videos everywhere with your friends, and tell them about my channel, and like and comment on the videos. It makes my day and it encourages me to make more videos. And thank you. Stay blessed, stay happy, and keep studying also. Bye bye.